Could I, sir? Welcome to Tales of Wales, the podcast that never fails to declare its own genius. Oh, nothing to declare except my own genius. And also does something else like declaring it. I haven't thought of the time.
Nothing to declare. You come through customs, Brexit, on point.
Yeah.
Very,
Well, that's
very
what,
current affairs.
That is just what I said, though, isn't it? I just did.
You said nothing to declare about your genius. Yeah, well done. Yeah, I meant more like I got no ciggies. I got no.
Well, do you know that's
raw...
that's when he said that, saying,
"Oh man, this code was lost on me." I've heard that before. I just don't know where it's from.
It's that bloody old gay fella. What's he called? What's he? Not Enid Blyton.
One of those Oscar Wilde types.
Yes,
is he?
Oscar Wilde. It is him. That it is.
Oh,
him.
it is that one. It's that specific gay man. Yeah.
When he was going through customs, either in London or in New York, they say anything to declare. He says nothing but my genius.
Oh, how fucking poncy!
You think wind your neck in, mate.
I would if I back then as well. You could just fucking whip out the truncheon and give him a little fucking
Well,
whack.
he did. He ended up in prison, and then he ended up as like a homeless person in France. And I was like, mate, if you weren't going around saying I had nothing to declare
about my own genius, you deserved it, you dick. You deserved it.
Yeah, but anyway, that's by the by.
He was
bi. Yeah. He was married for a bit, so
he was bi.
Yeah. This is an episode about the declares, and that's my link to there.
I got it. It was very good. Yeah. It was very good.
Also, a chocolate I don't like, or a treat I don't like. Like the toffee eclairs. Oh, the ones that have. I like it.
I like an eclair. I like a little eclair.
So not a pastry eclair.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
The chewy bag boy.
Yeah, it does. That is so you. You're such a Werther's original of a bloke.
Oh no! Don't put me in the Werther's category. But I will have an eclair. The thing with the eclair, I like the risk as well because I got a couple of fillings in this old noggin.
Oh man!
And I feel like they're going to go fucking yank them straight out, expose a nerve. You know?
Yeah, they'll just plug us out. You could like old like mortar and castle. If you built a castle made of the fucking goo from the eclair, nothing could break it down.
Yeah, you can't weaken those walls. I remember it reminds me of the dentist, right? Thinking about my fillings. I remember I went like I don't know, it must have been like my late 20s or something like that. I'd had a couple of fillings when I was quite young, when I was like I don't know, like a teenager. Didn't look after my teeth when I was young, basically. But now look at them.
Yeah, you paid for the pearly whites.
The pearly whites now, but. Yeah, back then I had these fillings. You know, they're like really they look gross. They're like blacky, kind of metally looking thing, right? When I went to get I had to have them replaced when I was like in my late 20s because they were like, oh yeah, what happens is putting metal in your teeth actually isn't very good for you. And and I was like, I probably could have told you that at the time. Like I wasn't a dentist, but I used to put in fucking chunks of metal in your teeth.
I've got two fillings. Go on. I was
just going to say that I didn't know this, but the old metal fillings, they expand over time. So what one was doing was basically splitting my tooth very slowly. And they were they expand over time. It's not very good for you, really. And I was like, why did we think to do this as like a society? Chuck it in.
My mum's fucking fillings had mercury in them. Which is what is like so poisonous.
Literal poison. Yeah. This is a very secure wrapped bit of arsenic we're going to put into your tooth. Don't worry, it's only lethal if the outside ruptures, which it will do in 5 years. Yeah.
Like Americans make fun of British teeth. Like when they hear our practices, was like, oh yeah, we just stick chunks of metal in it. Yeah. I got one metal filling and one modern filling. I hate they're so like I even like the whole process of little injections where they're like fucking your gums.
I hate it, man.
Remember when I ended up in hospital in COVID time because I had like some like
you like the elephant man, weren't you?
Yeah, like my face was swollen up so much because it was COVID. You couldn't go to the dentist, and one of the options was to pull out my own tooth. It was like an abscess.
Was that on fucking 111 or something? Well, option one, get some pliers, yank your own tooth out.
Loads of people in lockdown did that because they couldn't wait to see a dentist.
My uncle, my scumbag uncle, he's done that with pretty much all his teeth, and he wasn't even in lockdown. He said like it was just really hurting. There was like an exposed nerve or something. Well, and I was like, did you go to the dentist? He went, just yanked that out. I was like,
oh fucking hell! Well, I looked online. It's like, but it actually wasn't an abscess. I thought, maybe it's an abscess. So then, if you pull out your tooth, it'll do that. But it wasn't. It was like in my blood. It was like like a similar
in
thing
the
to
blood.
sepsis. It was in the blood, brother. Yeah, brother. And
with 111 agent, what you gonna have to do, brother? Get a pair of pliers and pull that bad boy out.
Yeah, so I'd have yanked out my own tooth and nothing would have happened because it was like deep in that.
Blood spewing out your mouth. You go, I'm a real American.
They did an operation on me in a corridor. And I remember that being a thing, like corridor AE or whatever it was.
That's the thing they say a lot now, corridor care, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was in a corridor and they had to put some like...
you were the star of corridor care?
Yeah, and I at the time I was because it was like my face had swollen. They tried to put like an injection in, but my face was already swollen, so we like pulled it even further.
Like a big old and the needle you use on like animals in the zoo or something, just fucking jam it in your face,
booted up the ass. So my face was so swollen. But when they added more fluid to like numb me, it just added more fluid in and pushed it more. And I was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So then they
like my head's gonna fucking explode, literally.
But they changed it to give me liquid morphine, and it was the fucking best. And then even afterwards,
ever since.
Even afterwards, I was like, "Oh, can I have some more morphine?" And the nurse looked, "Oh, you only had some 2 hours ago." And I was like, "Oh, I'm in severe pain." And she was like, "Well, you're a big lad." And I thought, "Oh, in that case, every time they ask, I'll just say, 'Can I have more?'" And I was getting properly high. And
I'm a big lad, though, aren't I? Mate?
Yeah, she said, she's like, "Oh, you're a big lad, you can handle that." And I was like, I think that's what the doctor said to the nurse. The nurse was like, "Okay, I can give you more." And then I just played on that for like 3 days.
It's like flash forward to like 10 years, you're in an alley somewhere looking like an absolute skagger, and you're like fucking tapping up like, I'm a big lad, I can handle it, can't I? Yeah.
By like day 2, I was kind of done. I was fine to leave, but I had to stay there for one more night, and I was just asking for more morphine. And because I've done like MDMA, it's the exact same feeling.
More for the road.
I was listening to music, and I was like, this going. I had my hands above my head, and I was like waving out.
It's a hacienda, bro.
It's fucking hacienda. I love that, mate. Oh, fucking hell, can I be fit? Anyway, I got a note to tell you, a story to tell you, which I haven't mentioned in a while.
Do tell.
But I just noticed then we're getting a bit into the episode, but we'll
go on, chuck it in, mate.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I had my first proper Bridgend experience. Like I went for a night out with Ollie and Sean, our 2 mates, and it was really fun. But we ended up in this like Irish bar, and these. Because it was like a night before not Thanksgiving, fucking hell, Good Friday.
Oh yeah,
and so it was a bank holiday, and everyone was like boozing, and we had these people sat on our table. It's like it was me, Sean, and Ollie. We were doing a pub quiz. These 2 girls then sat by us just because there's nowhere else to sit, and we were like, yeah, sure, sit there. And then
dirty dogs,
and then these group of guys who were like just proper cunts, like really, really cunty. They came over and started hassling the girls a little.
Are they kind of the cunts that would naturally gravitate to an Irish type bar? I'm picturing a certain type of person. Am I on the money?
No, they look like those 4 guys in that video where they all dress like they're from Zara with really tight trousers on.
Yeah,
like those kind
of
cunts. Yeah. And they came over and were quite rude to the girls, and then like. Because I think they were trying to crack on with them, and then the girls were a bit like, oh, "Don't be dicks." So then
when in doubt, always be rude to them. That's the way to do it.
And we were kind of speaking to them for a bit. They then were like, "Oh, that's kind of ruined our night." And I said, "Oh, that's a shame," because these like guys just came up and been pricks. And then the girls' friends turned up, and then the guys were like, they're kind of starting on the girls. It's really bizarre. But by this stage, they were next to us on the table, and then one pointing to Ollie and me. And was like, "You fucking gay lads, are you?" And I went, "Yeah, we are." Yeah. I went, "We are actually." And he went, "Oh." I went, "What? Is that fucking a problem with that? Is that a fucking problem?" And I stood up like that. I was like, "Yeah, fucking homophobe." And then
you stood up like Ollie, that. Give out Ollie a kiss on the cheek. Yeah. Go, I'm what? I'm what? Yeah.
And then because I had a pen and paper from the quiz, right? I kept drawing, and there was like 5 of the lads, and one of them was slightly shorter and bald. So I drew a photo. Like whilst they were saying to Ollie, "Down your Guinness." And Ollie was like, "No, it's all right, mate." And then one of them had a Copperberg, and he went, "Why are you drinking?" Ollie kept saying, "Why are you drinking squash, mate? Why have you got a squash with me?"
Excellent.
And he was like chomping. He was like, "It's fucking not squash, man. It's fucking Copperberg."
I love that. Like we've had so many years of being like acclimatized to not chomping at anything. So like, I know. Like, "Down your Guinness." "No, I'm okay." why are you drinking squash? Hang on a minute, that's too far.
And whilst Ollie was doing that, like arguing, like just not even arguing, just like genuinely doing brilliant, like little, like just making them get riled. I drew the 4 of them, and then the one mate really small with a massive egghead.
Tiny little, I can imagine.
Without talking, I turned the paper around and slid it across the table and went and pointed at him and then pointed at the egg. Yeah. He went fucking nuts. He was like, fucking hell, brother. And I was like, oh, that's you. You're a little egg, man. Then,
brilliant. I like that. The slide across the table sounds very cinematic. You know, like in a film where someone like is offering a check to bribe someone or something, just like that little slide thing. Like watching that.
And I'm quite good at doodling. Like, I'm quite a good little doodler. So it was very clear what. And also, I did a really over the top egg head. Like the egg of the head was the same size as his little body. Just like, here you go.
I love that. Like that's such a childish thing to do. For him to be like, it's just like, oh wow.
Yeah. And then they left it. Like, cause there was like no real bouncer there. Me and Ollie were leaving the exact same time when they were leaving. And I was like, for fuck's sake, there was like 5 of them. They could kick our heads in, but it all kind of similar.
You could take little egghead at least. Or fucking Humpty Dumpty his ass.
Crack his little, crack
all the king's horses and all the king's men.
You got a chance to meet together again.
That would be a great thing. Let's have a fight in that. Listen, mate, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put you back together again.
Listen, Brev, you can march up and down. No, I did the wrong one. I did the Grand Old Duke of York.
Imagine you just did the Grand Old Duke of York. You're like, what are you on about? Exactly, mate. Done you. Flabbergasted
keep walking, you fucking Grand Old Duke, you nonce. Yeah. Anyway, that's my first. It was my first night in Bridgend as well, and the first night
as a Brackla boy.
A Brackla boy, but it was very fun. And the Irish pub's actually very nice. It's like the nice.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, is it like relatively new? Isn't it? Yeah, it is the one I'm thinking. It's nice in there. Yeah, it is really nice. There's did you go to that one that's like
the pub quiz was brilliant, man.
Oh, I've never done the quiz there, but
I don't like a pub quiz. I'm like, you're at the pub, you don't need anything else.
That's true. Did you go to that place that's like an old cathedral and it's been like they've done absolute sacrilege with the indoors where it's like a proper like scatty dance floor kind of nightclubby kind of vibe? Do you remember what was that gay bar that was no, the gay bar that was there was 2 of them. There was Pulse and there was maybe I'm thinking of Pulse actually. You know, if you're looking down Churchill Way.
No, I think I know the one you mean. It's like an old church that's been made into like a club, isn't it?
No. Sorry, I'm just saying on the inside it felt very like Pulse like.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Which obviously the Catholics wouldn't bloody want, would they? But yeah, it's funny because it's like this lovely build on the outside. It actually still looks really good on the inside. If you like look up, it's like it's got all the trimmings like as a like a cathedral.
I've only walked past it. I walked past it on like a Tuesday morning, and it was already getting a bit like Larry. There was like some people shouting outside of it.
It's that kind of joint. It is that kind of joint.
Bridgend is quite rough. Like town centre is rough. It's like
I think it's like it's one of the first stops where all like the Valley's commandos come down. Isn't it? Like if they're not going full on to Cardiff, they'll stop down in Bridgend. Yeah.
And it's like a big rugby town. Yeah. Big people are all quite
Bridgend
big.
Ravens, baby. Go Ravens, go Ravens.
Go Ravens, go Ravens. But from one group of marauders to another group of marauders in Bridgend, the Clares who are around this area and the Vale. Today's episode is all about the Norman invasion and the Norman rulers of bit past the South Wales, I do believe, because
it is true. Yeah, very true. So today I'm going to be talking about a family that plagued Wales over many generations, an Anglo-Norman family. We've mentioned loads on this pod before, and each time we've undoubtedly always called them out of being a little bastards that they are. Yeah, you bastards, you bastards. I'm talking, of course, about the deplorable, the deceptive, the downright dirty dogs, the Declares. The goddamn Declares. The Declares. Devon Dudley, Declare.
I do declare.
I'm surprised you haven't done that yet. I do declare.
I don't like doing it.
Peach tea. I say that every time. And every time it's funny. But have
you ever had peach tea? It's really good, man. I had some in Georgia.
In
America.
Were they speaking like that? They're going,
how Georgia. It's
sweet
hot on the savannah today.
Yeah. And the little sort of oh, my, like tapping their brow.
Dabbing my brow. Dabbing the brow is something I do too often when I'm in public.
I don't do
too unbothered.
I haven't got the the quality, the classiness thing. I'm absolute
swipe. You're a
swiper like that. It's all over my fucking mitts.
All your chops. I just say I've had a Modelo is quickly becoming my new favorite pint.
I love Modelo, man. So
Modelo
good.
I went yesterday. I was in work for I was in London for work with and I was there with my mate Lou. I had like an office day, so I had to be in Battersea, but then we fucked off to Victoria, and opposite Victoria Station is a like a market, like a like one of those like street food marketplaces.
They got them everywhere these days.
They bloody do, but it has like some really, really good, like, they're not chains, they're like franchises. So they have like Bleecker Burger there, which is a really good burger, and other nice things. But the best thing about it was they have Modelo on tap, which I've never seen before.
Oh, mate, it's so hard to find on tap. Like, I like the bottles, don't get me wrong, but like when we went to Manchester, we were at this place for happy hour, and you could get a pint of Modelo for like $2.90 or something like that.
They're really good pints, aren't they?
So good. They go down an absolute dream.
Yeah, when Lou brought it over, Lou, his wife, and me were just having one before coming home, and he brought over them, and I was like, oh, do you know, I'm not really keen for a pint. I'm a bit, I'm just not feeling it. And I was like, fucking hell, this is like, it's not fizzy, it's not too fizzy that it's too gassy, but it's not like a fucking ale or something horrible like that. It's just,
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful pint.
So I've had a Modelo so far. Now I'm on the high knees 0%. But I'm doing our new thing where we do half beer, half non-beer.
I got this is my third Bud Light, but I'm going to switch to a non-alky after this. Then just tag in and out.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Just because
for anyone like us who are big boozers, it's such a game changer to limit half your pints.
It saves your head the next day. Doesn't necessarily save my guts, though. I don't know about you. Awful on the guts still.
You can't really save my guts. My guts have gone.
I
still think my heart and things. I've given up on the guts. Like that is it's
given up the ghost on it.
Yeah, it's its own realm. It can do whatever it likes. It's like the astral planes.
We got some guests coming on, so I can't.
Yeah, well, actually, we're guests on their podcast.
We're guests on theirs even, so can't be too Larry and too smashed.
No, because they do longies. They're like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, before we start, can you please vote for us on the Listeners Choice, the Golden Lobes? Jack will put it in whoever's editing will put it in the notes.
I'll link it. But yeah, give us a vote. We'd love it.
And I've had lots of you reach out on Insta, and Reese, and lots of people message. Reese WhatsApp me, who's a listener. I was going to say, well, I have him saved as Reese, who's one of my cousins, and Reese messaged saying, "I just voted," and I was like, what the hell's my cousin? I had no idea.
Have you told my cousin?
I was like, yeah. And then because and then lots of people on Instagram came out and said they voted as well. It generally is super. It's so kind. It's really it means an awful lot to us. Yeah, we won't do a Patreon thing this time because I feel like we promote that a bit too much.
But cheers, guys. We got the link in the description. Give us a little vote if you're feeling generous.
We bloody love you.
Bloody love you. Right, back to the Clares. So. We'll start with the first of the Declare name, the man who started it all, a guy named Richard Fitzgilbert. Richard was a kinsman of William the Conqueror, and after 1066, when the Normans conquered England, he was gifted valuable lands for his services. These lands were in Suffolk, centred around the village of Clare, which is where he and his descendants would get their moniker from. So Richard Fitzgilbert became Richard de Clare. Richard himself was actually from an esteemed line as well. He could claim Richard I of Normandy as a great-grandfather and the Viking king Rollo as a great-great-great-grandfather, the first ever ruler of Normandy.
Yeah, who kind of helped split the line between Vikings and Normans.
Exactly, and so he was descended from Rollo, so a bit of a pedigree with him. So while Richard, the Lord of Clare, didn't have any dealings in what would become Wales, he was the first foot in the door and would be the dirty little seed that would sprout his future oppressors. Richard retired to a monastery in 1088 and passed his possessions in Normandy to his son Roger, and those in England to his second son Gilbert.
Big Rog.
He died not too long after and was buried in St. Neot's Priory in 1091. Like I said, his lands in England fell to his son Gilbert FitzRichard, now known as Gilbert FitzRichard de Clare, or just Gilbert de Clare in some cases. Just FYI, in this context, the Fitz is the same as like ap and ab in Welsh. It just basically denotes son of. So Gilbert FitzRichard, is Gilbert's son of Richard.
It sounds German, doesn't it?
It does, actually. Yeah.
Das ist unfit und
Schnitz. Fit and snitch. I knew we were going to fit and snitch. After the Conqueror's death in 1087, he decided to split his lands in England and Normandy between his sons William Rufus and Robert Curthose, respectively. This was a big problem for all the lords that held land in both England and Normandy, and so they all thought it would be best to bring the two territories back under one ruler, and they decided that ruler would be Robert. This led to an open rebellion against William II, of which Gilbert de Clare was a part of. So basically, when William the Conqueror on his deathbed decided to split the Normandy lands and the English lands, lords that held lands in both, they were thinking, fuck's sake, we can't petition for my land back in Normandy without pissing off the English king and vice versa. Yeah. So they decided, let's engineer something where we can just put one ruler over all of it, and then we get to keep the most bang for our buck. Yeah. In 1088, after his father passed on his lands, Gilbert and his brother Roger fortified their castle at Tonbridge to defend against William II, aka William Rufus, aka William the Red. But the fortress was stormed and Gilbert was wounded in the fray and taken prisoner. He wouldn't be released until the year 1100, 12 years later, when William II was killed while out hunting by an arrow through the lung, shot by one of his own men. Some historians claim that this was just a classic freak accident, because people did used to die quite a lot in hunts back then. Yeah. But others say there could be some shadowy goings on in the background that led to the king's death. And some historians found one source as well that said that maybe Gilbert was involved in the planning, perhaps, but he was in prison at the time, so it is a bit like how much credence does that have? In any case, when Henry I, William Rufus's younger brother, inherited the throne, the fortunes of the de Clare family improved and Gilbert was released. 10 years of breathing free air later, and Henry I was looking to take Cardigan from Owain ap Cadogan in West Wales. This was as punishment for a number of crimes, including the abduction of the wife of Gerald de Windsor. He tasked Gilbert with establishing a foothold in the area and bringing the local populace under Norman control. Gilbert managed to do this with a large force and was rewarded for his efforts with the lordship of Cardigan. He strengthened the Norman hold on the area by building castles in Cardigan and Llanbadarn near Aberystwyth, which gave him effective control over Ceredigion until his death in 1117. Gilbert's lands and titles would fall to his son Richard. I know we say a lot about the Welsh rulers always being called the same things, like Llywelyn or Griffith or whatever, but these boring bastards, I'm serious, they just cycle through Gilbert and Richard pretty much every time. It's Gilbert fits Richard, and then the next one is Richard fits Gilbert, all the way through. It made it fucking. I don't think
that's going to be confusing.
It was so confusing. I basically had to just use the dates, chronological dates, to be right, which one am I talking about now? And trying to find these fuckers online, because you have to specify what date when you're looking for them, obviously, because otherwise it comes up with one from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway. The lands in England and Wales passed to Richard, or Richard Fitz Gilbert de Clare, 3rd Baron of Tonbridge, Lord of Cardigan, and 1st Earl of Hertford, who was the eldest son of Gilbert de Clare. After Henry I died in 1135, of food poisoning as well, by the way, which I think is a pretty lame way for a king to go. But I imagine it probably did happen quite a lot back then, though, didn't it? For food poisoning, what can you do about it? Fuck all.
We mentioned this a lot. The game Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That was one of the first ways I died. I ate gone off beef.
Oh, I've done that.
And then, and I didn't realize at the time the food has a hygiene rating after how long it's been on your person.
If you eat old wolf's meat or something like that, then it's
I ate it and I was getting really sick, and then I died from dysentery.
Oh yeah, if you don't have is it a digestive potion or something like that?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Save you.
Back in the day, if you get diarrhea now, it's you get that little blood going diarrhea. Oh, and it's a laugh if anything. Back in the day,
fun for everyone
death
these days. Yeah, literally, because you die of dehydration, malnutrition, whatever. So basically, you died from that. But I did read as well that he supposedly got his food poisoning from eating too many lampreys, which is mad. They're like eels.
What's a lamprey?
They're like eels. They're weird eels. They got weird mouths. They got little sucker mouths.
We haven't mentioned that me and Jack bumped into each other the other day.
How did we miss that?
Me and Jack did a podcast together on last Thursday.
Yeah.
And the next day, I was taking Emma I just had for a nice meal out, like quite a fancy meal out actually. Planned it a bit in advance. It was to celebrate some stuff, it's called Hiraeth. There's a beautiful restaurant in Cardiff.
Lovely.
Big mistake was me and Emma drove past the pub Hiraeth, or like a restaurant in Hiraeth in like near Cowbridge where we live, and we thought it was that one, and apparently it was that one, but it's moved. It was like it's moved to Cardiff. Jack's just replenishing a beer. I'm going to do the same.
I am, sorry.
But, sorry, we're both burping and replenishing beers. But anyway, So I put this beer in a restaurant and I got the wrong place, nearly turned up to the wrong place. And I just thought, hang on, let's just double check this. And then I realised it's in Cardiff, not Cowbridge. Got there, eating this, it was like a 7-course taster menu, one of the best meals I've ever had.
Fucking stunning, yeah, so
absolutely unbelievable. And then Jack walks through the door.
Who walks in?
His missus. And me and Emma were the first people there. It's not a huge place, and we were like, "What the fuck?" And Jack, my wife, was so funny because
Amy came in, and we were like, I think we were a little bit late, so Amy was like quick to go to like the staff to be like, "Hi, sorry we're late," blah blah blah. I came in and we did like an absolute. I don't know if we'll have this. We probably won't have this on the Patreon as the video, but we did like the pointing at each other meme. Where we were just like, I got a minute. It's like, it can't be, surely. And I was going, Amy. I said, Amy, look who it is. Amy. And she was like, Jack, I'm trying to talk to staff. And I was just like, we were like, what?
And they both thought we'd like organised it because it's like a very fancy meal. The night before, me and Jack had done a podcast for a while. And we didn't mention it once to each other the next day.
That is very unlike us to do that. Yeah.
You know? But we just ended up sitting next to each other, which was really fun. It was like
it was a good fun.
It was. I wasn't drinking, which it would be more of a laugh if we were getting drunk. But it was just nuts that we were so close. We speak to each other every day.
Yeah,
didn't say
you're both going to Hiraeth. Yeah, but it was absolutely banging food. Anyone who's in the Cardiff area, go to Hiraeth.
Yeah,
pay the money. Enough. It's fucking
it's a bit spenny, but it's fucking. It's a
one of the nicest I've had in a long time.
I've done loads of like fancy taster menu stuff, and I've never been like, oh, that was amazing. I've always thought, oh, it's nice, but like, you know, you spend like 200 quid on it, it's spending to do. Although I do what I always do. I did get a double cheeseburger on the way home.
When you text that, I was like, that's insane. I love that. Now for the real meal. Yeah,
I do that every time I have a fancy cook. I want to like humble myself and stay true to who I am.
Yeah, don't want to get too big for your boots. But they got your boy Jack over here as well to eat this absolute purely like veg thing. That was actually stunning. It was so nice.
It was kale. No, it was wild garlic and asparagus custard.
Yeah,
with like
nuts.
They froze buttermilk and shaved it on top, and they had like a granola on top of it, and yeah, it was fucking.
It was so nice.
Wasn't that insane? It was the maddest thing I've ever eaten.
I said to Amy, if I saw that on a menu, I'd be like, get that out of my sight. Because I've been like, that's disgusting. But
it was like salty, custardy, like hot, cold. Oh, it's nuts. It was unbelievable.
So nice.
But that reminded me, I went for another 7-course meal, like one of those taster meals, and most of it was fish. And I thought, fish can get to fuck.
You're not a fish lad, are you?
Not a fish lad. They had eels. No, not eels. Something like that. But I thought,
a couple of lampreys. I don't think so, mate. Fucking.
I thought, I'm not a fucking peasant from the 800s.
Not after what happened to King Henry back in the day. Okay, bit of food poisoning. Not having lampreys. Okay?
Yeah, not having that. You're trying to poison me.
Exactly, bastards.
Sorry, back to the story.
But anyway, so yeah, he supposedly got it from eating lampreys, which I mean, don't eat a lamprey. That's just my advice. Yeah. That's my mantra.
Have a double cheeseburger.
Yeah, have a double cheeseburger. Don't have lampreys. Yeah. So anyway, following the king's death, there was a bit of a breakdown in command on Richard's Welsh lands, and the locals, who had been treated like second-class citizens up until this point, they took the opportunity to have a good old-fashioned rebellion. The new king, Stephen...
Do you know what year this is?
1135.
Yeah.
So the new king, Stephen, ascended the throne shortly after that year, and Richard was a big supporter of him. He was present at many of his events, like treaty signings and charter testaments and whatnot. Richard was returning from one such event in 1136 after being blissfully ignorant of the chaos going on in Ceredigion. He was travelling the borders of Wales via Hereford, along with Brian Fitzcount, who was a peer at the time, and he held lordship over Abergavenny at the time. Brian, silly name for a lord, by the way, but Brian, Lord Brian, I am.
Oh, Brian, I am.
My name's Lord Brian Fitzcount.
And I'm really pissed off,
I'm really pissed off about being Lord of Abergavenny, actually. But anyway, Brian, he advised Richard that the road they were travelling could be dangerous and that they should probably pick an alternative route. Richard didn't heed his mate's warning, and the two parted ways, each choosing to get to their destinations on different roads. Richard, now with a much smaller force, was ambushed by a band of rebels from Gwent, led by Iorwerth ab Owain, Prince of Gwynllwg and Lord of Caerleon, who had picked a tract of wooded path called the Ill Way of Coed Grano as the site of the attack, just north of Abergavenny. Also, why would you travel if you're like a fucking high ranking lord or whatever? Which way should we go? Let's go the Ill Way of Coed Grano. The Ill Way, isn't it? Nothing's going to happen there.
And King Stephen was the guy who was around for the anarchy. I'm not sure if you'll touch on that, but this is the part of in England.
Yeah, I only touched briefly on it because it's not too much to do. Well, the Declares do have a part in it, but
but that's why the Welsh started rebelling a lot more.
That's with Matilda and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, King Stephen and Matilda end up getting into like
it's like a dispute on who's actually in charge, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's where like throughout this period, then you have loads of like rebellions. Well, not even rebellions. It's like the Welsh take back the lands that haven't been like the Haybarth.
It's while all this like structural shit is going on with the Normans at the time. The Welsh are like, right, now's the time to. Let's or either pick a side or let's take off.
You have like the Battle of Creek Mawr, and you have like Owain Bowden or like all of his descendants and Lord Rees and all that. Sorry.
Spoilers, bro, for fucking something that happened about 1,000 years ago. Like. No, all good. It's all good. I like it being all natural. So, as I said, Richard, now with a small force, was ambushed at the Ill Way of Coed Grano, which is just north of Abergavenny. There, Richard Fitzgilbert de Clare was killed along with all his men, and the Welsh even marked the site of his death with a Carreg Dial, or the Stone of Revenge, which you can still go and see today up near Abergavenny. Nice. Richard was buried at Tonbridge Priory, which he actually founded years earlier as well. But yeah, he met his brutal end at the hand of some Welsh rebels there. The news of Richard's death gave the Welsh a sense of hope and pushed Owain Gwynedd, King of Gwynedd, to invade the Norman territories near him and ally with Griffith ap Rhys of the Haybarth. This rock-solid alliance would lead to a massive victory at the Battle of Creek Mawr, as Frank's just mentioned. It's all good, mate. It's all part of history, mate. It's free-flowing. Battle of Creek Mawr, which... the Welsh fought against a much larger Norman force. We actually did an epi on that a while back as well. So go check that out if you want a deeper dive into it. It's a good one. Very good battle.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Back in the late Richard de Clare's lands, the town of Cardigan, now a Norman stronghold, was captured and burnt by Welsh rebels, forcing Richard's widow to take refuge in Cardigan Castle. She eventually held out until her rescue by a chap named Miles of Gloucester. But Richard's lands would end up passing to his eldest son. As you can imagine, shock horror, his name was fucking Gilbert again. So we're now cycling back to Gilbert FitzRichard.
What's eating Gilbert grape?
Exactly. I always say, oh Gil, from the Simpsons. Oh, come on, you got to help old Gil out.
Oh, come on, I'll take the old
Oh, come on, my dad was killed at fucking Keeler-Coed or whatever the fuck it was called. I've already forgot the name. Now this Richard... New Richard Fitzgilbert. Richard Fitzgilbert didn't do anything in Wales, really. So I won't dwell on him too long, but he was praised in the history books for being like a steady hand in Welsh lands. Basically, walking that little tightrope between being harsh enough to keep people in line, not too harsh to push the populace into like an all-out rebellion. Anyway, he joined up with a rebellion against the English King Stephen a few times, sided with Matilda, and he had all his castles confiscated, but he eventually made up with the king and he got them given back. Simple as that. There is more detail to that, obviously, but I'm not focusing on Stevie Boy and Matilda. This Richard de Clare, he died unmarried and without any heirs. Virgin. So his lands and titles went to his brother Roger de Clare. Big Rog, right? The Rogerer. So Roger... he was born in 1116, and there wasn't really anything big about Big Rog that I could find until 1157, when he received a grant from Henry II that he was allowed to claim whatever lands he could conquer in South Wales. This was as part of like an expansionist sort of push at the time. And from this grant, Roger went on to capture castles at Humphrey, Aberdyfi, Dinayr, and Rhystyd. These were all in the lands belonging to Rhys ap Griffith, aka the Lord Rhys, who, as we've discussed in the past, did an episode on him. This boy was not afraid of a scrap. So, despite being a hard bastard, though, Lord Rhys tried diplomacy first, and he sent many letters to the king complaining of these encroachments on his land, but the king didn't even bother to respond. Because of this, Lord Rhys sent his nephew, Einion ab Anaraud, to attack Humphrey Castle, as well as a few other castles the Normans had taken. Sometime between 1158 and 1160, Roger amassed an army and marched it to relieve Carmarthen Castle, which was being besieged by Rhys and his Welsh forces. Roger pitched his war camp at a place called Dinweilir, but once he arrived, he basically, I read a few different accounts of this, and one was like, oh, his strategic mind, went into gear and said, oh, we can't really win this fight. Others said he was basically pussed out and was like, there's no way I'm going to take on Lord Rhys and his forces, because he was revered as a big time battle boy at this point, Lord Rhys. So it was like, if you were going to fight him,
fire to everything. And
he was not to be fucked with lightly. No. So I think he probably,
that episode's mad. The amount of people he just sacked, because he had nowhere to call his own for ages. He was just burning all of West and Mid Wales.
He was not a merciful guy if you were up against him in the battlefield. So I tend to believe that this Roger de Clare probably pushed out and was like, I'm not going to fight him. I'll probably just die. So instead, he sued for peace, and Roger got to retire home. 3 years later, Lord Rhys started besieging castles the Normans had taken again after his nephew Einion, the one I mentioned earlier, was supposedly killed in assassination by the Norman due to Norman scheming. Rhys was tapping, fuming, raging, as you can imagine, at this point, and he was enough of a threat. His forces had been whipped up enough that Henry II, even he decided to lead an army into Wales in 1165 to try and subdue things. Both sides would avoid bloodshed, though, when the king and Lord Rhys made peace before any swords could be swung. So Lord Rhys was a big enough threat that the king himself was like, I have to go in and sort this out myself. Big Rog didn't do much else of note in terms of Wales, and he died in 1173, passing the de Clare family name, fortune, titles, and land down to another Richard, of course, Richard de Clare, the 3rd Earl of Hertford. I will come back to him, but I wanted to chuck another stray de Clare in here as a nice breaking point for part 1. And this is a different Richard de Clare, 2nd Earl of Pembroke, who went by the quite cool nickname Strongbow.
Strongbow.
The Strongbow. Don't know if that's where
we've had him on our list to do.
Yeah, I think we have
him on our list to do an episode of. Yeah.
So I'll just do a very slight thing on him. But basically, Strongbow, he was a cousin of Roger de Clare that we discussed. And while he didn't have any campaigns or battles in Wales as such, as de Clare, he had access to the de Clare family lands in southwest Wales. And he used these as a staging point to invade our Celtic cousins over in Ireland. In 1167, Dermot MacMurrough, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was deposed as the King of Leinster by Rory O'Connor, the High King of Ireland. And so to recover his kingdom, Dermot asked Henry II for help. The king limited his help to offering English mercenaries only, but Dermot did meet Richard and some other Welsh martial lords. The fallen Irish king came to an agreement with Richard. If Strongbow helped take Leinster back, he could wed his eldest daughter, Aoife, which would include potential successions to the crown. Dermot and Strongbow raised a large army and sent it off commanded by Raymond Fitzgerald, which included the very effective Welsh longbowmen, which were put to good use in that Battle of Creekmawr we mentioned earlier. They set off from South Wales. I couldn't find specifically where they set off from, but one site I saw did say it might have been Aberdyfi or Milford Haven in English. Under this Raymond guy's leadership, the forces managed to take several towns, including Wexford, Waterford, and Dublin, between 1169 and 1170. And now it was time for Richard to enter the fray. But just before he set off, again from Aberdyfi, a messenger came saying that the king had forbidden him to go. Richard ignored this message and jumped on the ship to the Emerald Isle anyway, and King Henry confiscated Strongbow's lands in France, England, and Wales for the disobedience. The plot was successful, and Leinster was returned to Dermot, who honoured his promise and let Strongbow marry his daughter. A year later, Dermot died, and Leinster fell to his son Donald McMurrough. Henry II was becoming worried about Strongbow's growing power in Ireland now and offered to return the confiscated lands in France, England and Wales in exchange for what he gained in Ireland. Richard de Clare agreed to the terms and handed over Dublin, Waterford and a handful of other fortresses, but he kept Kildare for himself. The king would then cross over to Ireland in 1172 for 6 months, where he and Strongbow actually mended their relationship and apparently grew quite close. Richard even helped King Henry with revolts in France in 1173, and as a reward, King Henry gave Richard a Leinster back. So in the end, he managed to get all his UK and French lands back, plus a hefty slice of Ireland. Strongbow tried to expand his Irish holdings by taking over Munster as well, but was beaten back at the Battle of Thurles in 1174.
Isn't it mad how fucking for hundreds of years it was just war?
Yeah, there's just nothing else really.
Just nothing else. Just like constantly like, right, it's mad to think like, I know we have a mad time at the moment and there's, some things going on. It's not like every single year since you've been alive, someone's tried to conquer your place or a new king is in. Like,
imagine just trying to get on with your life.
Yeah.
And like, and especially then with like the lack of communication, you'd just be a peasant, like toiling the soil for like a year. And then you go back and be like, oh, bloody, the Lord of the Manor, bloody, fucking Richard de Clare. What a knob. And they go, oh, no, it's not Richard anymore. It's back to fucking Bertie or whatever the fuck his name. Gilbert. Yeah. Gilbert. Yeah. Oh, Gil.
It's because like, we study history. We've been like doing all this stuff for ages. And if we think we cover from like 600 until, I don't know, up until after Glyndwr's last one, that's like 800 years of every single year there's been some sort of revolt, rebellion or war.
It's crazy to think, even when we cover like Welsh kingdoms, right? And it's like, oh, this king saw 7 years of peace.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in Wales was still carnage. Like it was still like raging war everywhere.
Llewellyn Fawr had like that thing, the Peace of the Middle, where it was 6 years where he controlled pretty much all of Wales, and it was and England had no war with him. So for 6 years,
imagine just 6 years though. You better make your most of those 6 years. And that's what they call it,
the Peace of the Middle, because it's the only time where there was any kind of like non-war.
You better hope you were of like tavern going age in that 6 years, because what a time that would have been.
I don't think they had ages on them.
No, probably not. Yeah,
they didn't have a bouncer at the pub saying, "Sorry, mate, you can't come in moccasins."
Yeah, not in that brigandine, my friend.
Yeah.
So, Richard Strongbow de Clare, he would only live for 2 years after that defeat, the Battle of Thurles, and he died of an infected leg in 1176. Some sources I saw say it was a battle wound that he sustained. Others say it was just an ulcer, which is a lot less gravitas to it. But there we go. And like I said, I'll come back to the main de Clare children next time in part 2. But for now, that's a rundown of one of the most powerful Marcher families that ever got a foothold in Wales. And we're not even up to the 1200s yet. So just, hold on to your butts, because part 2 is coming shortly.
I do like these deeper dives. I'm enjoying them. Well, diolch yn gwrando. If you got this far, please do drop us a 5-star or follow us on Insta or go to Patreon at Tales for Wales. We love you. Bye.
Deal. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da.
Bye.